Welcome back to another edition of GTN Coach's Corner, where we sit down, read out and discuss and hopefully answer all of your triathlon-related training questions. So straight into it, Mackenzie Usher says, GTN Coach's Corner, what is the difference between rest week and a taper in terms of intensity, and are they essentially the same?
No, they're not.
No, they're not. Well, they are both easier weeks, so there's similarities there, but they kind of have different goals at the end of them, don't they?
Yeah, you can't just copy and paste that training from an easy week to a taper week
or race at the end of your rest week.
Nah. So the main difference is, so an easy week you would use in the middle of your training block, and that is to just fully recover from your training, and that is predominantly going to be a lower volume and just easier sessions. A taper week, the main difference, yes, you're going to go for a lower volume. There are going to be some easier sessions in there, but you're also still going to have some intensity in there. And that's really important because you're sort of trying to prime the body, get it firing on all cylinders, ready for race day. So actually, kind of the biggest misconception is that a taper week is easy. And actually,
just put your feet up and do nothing.
You'd be surprised actually how many hard and intense sessions should still be in there.
Yeah, most sessions actually in the taper week, I'd say, need to have some kind of intensity to kind of get your body firing. Whereas in a rest week, you're probably going to, your main goal is to just be recovered at the end of it. And actually, at the end of that rest week, you're going to feel pretty lousy. You really feel lousy. You almost need a day of training to wake yourself up and get yourself back into training after that rest week. And you obviously don't want to be doing that on race day. So a taper week is completely different. It is a very different kind of structure.
And not to overcomplicate things here now, but and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, but there's like lots of different methods and thoughts on the taper week and how you, and obviously every athlete's different how they respond to a taper week. But obviously you're coming off a big training block into a race. And the fear is that you do a taper week too close and you don't actually fully recover. So what I've done in the past myself is sort of like you start that easy, you sort of start the taper almost 2 weeks out, so you have your recovery, hit some harder sessions again, and then you're into a bit of a taper into the race.
I always found that the best, and I do find that for most people, it's almost the most foolproof method is to have a complete taper, complete rest, like 10 days to 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Completely recover and then hit the race on the way back up. So almost you're building back up your training again, because you can't get that wrong. If you start feeling like you're pushing too hard or you're getting a bit tired, you just back that off a little bit. Whereas if you're the other way and you stop your training 7 days out and it's like, right, I'm going to go down and then hopefully I'll be on the way back. Yeah. It's completely unpredictable when that is.
And also what you often feel like you could probably liken it a bit to when you've done loads of exams at school or whatever, and you finish those exams and your body just goes, and you often get ill, or you feel really lousy. And the same at the end of like a big training block, you stop 7 days out from a race, you're like, God, I feel terrible. Yeah. And then you're hoping to suddenly try and race well in 7 days time. So you sort of, by doing it 10 days or 2 weeks before, you sort of get that out of the system, and then on the way back up, as long as you don't build up any fatigue, you're okay, and you're definitely sure you're going to be okay for race day. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. Definitely though, your recovery week is not your taper week. They're not the same thing. Okay, Hanver X3Y says, hello, I'm prepping for my first full distance Ironman Austria, and I'm a bit struggling with the mental side of the challenge. Maybe the dark days of winter had hit me, or it's just stress resurfacing. I can digest the load, but don't have the motivation. I don't have motivation problems to tackle weekly schedules. But I cannot neglect the sense of fear of failure that's got into my system. Do you reckon this is this too? And what simple tips do you deal with it? Hashtag GTN Coaches Corners. Oh, that's quite a deep question. Yeah.
The trials and tribulations of Ironman training, I think, is what you're experiencing there. It's a long, hard grind.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such an individual and personal sort of question and journey, really. We don't know what you're dealing with, but it's I mean, an Ironman is a massive undertaking. You've kind of got to I think what a lot of people do, particularly probably us Westerners, is separate the mind and the body. And if you're feeling mentally down and mentally fatigued, they go, well, yeah, my body's fine though. I've had 3 rest days. I need to go out training. Even if your mind is going, I really need another day in bed. I need a few more days of rest. I'm really struggling. And they just kind of separate those two things and go, well, yeah, no, hold on. My body's had 3 days of rest. It's absolutely fine. I can go do that long run that's on my program. And your mind's going, I just want to go to bed. I'm so tired. I'm so flat. I don't feel like doing this.
and we tend to not listen to the mind part, and the mind part is just as important. Like, you have to go, if you don't have the motivation to train, something's not recovered. You're not, and you have to kind of listen to that. And your body might be, I feel great. But if your mind is going, I don't want to do this.
Well, I was also going to say, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do nothing either. I think the fact, like with Ironman training or a lot of triathlon training, you are focusing, you're always doing sessions and intervals, and you've got to hit these times, paces, and that can get quite mentally draining. And actually, maybe, I mean, you probably enjoy just a bit of swimming, biking, running, going out on your gravel bike, whatever it may be. It's just like totally unstructured, going back to kind of the roots of why you got into this sport.
Dare I suggest you leave your Garmin at home, your Coros at home, and just go out without any numbers.
And that is going to be better than nothing. You're at least out there, you're active, you're probably still maintaining or gaining some aerobic fitness, but ultimately you're hopefully going to come out the other side and feel so much better.
And there's no failure in that session. You don't drag this like, well, I'm not going to nail my numbers in this session and I'm even further into the hole. You can't fail. You can just go out and enjoy nature.
But I do understand that accepting that you maybe need to do that is going to be hard. So you kind of got to like get on board with that. Get right. Well, I'm obviously clearly struggling right now. It's something or nothing, I guess, at this point. So actually, I'm just going to accept that I need to just go out and just do a gravel ride or wherever it is. So,
it is the mental struggle of training for long distance. It's a long grind before you get to the actual taper that we were talking about earlier in race day. But push on. It's worth it when you get there. Okay, Rory Broughton asks, hi, GTN Coach's Corner. How should I structure my training week right before and immediately after a B race that serves as a qualifier for my A race? In this example, I have a B race in May to qualify for the Olympic distance nationals in the US. There'll be 12 weeks after that B race until the nationals themselves. My weeks are structured 80-20 style, with build weeks ranging from 2 to 3 iterations, then the recovery weeks. I started the entire program in January, so I'm at week 13 right now, so that was a few weeks ago. But basically he's asking, how do you train through a B race?
Yeah, interesting, because obviously that B race is his qualifier, so he still needs to perform relatively well.
So it's not really a B race, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Unless he is, very, very confident that he's going to qualify anyway. Yeah.
I would agree, actually. It's not a B race because your rest of your season hinges on it. It is an A race. You have to taper for it. You have to make sure you're fully prepped for it and you do your absolute best at it. Otherwise, you miss the qualification. And what's the point of only getting peak fitness for your nationals?
And you know what? You've got plenty of 12 weeks is enough time to peak, have a bit of recovery, get some training in, and go again. So if you were saying they were only sort of 4 weeks apart or something, I'd say, well, and not to qualify, I'd say we would have trained through that. But yeah. Okay,
well, for those people who don't have the same situation and you're training through a B race, what would be the key things to think about then training through a B race?
I don't know, you tell me.
Well, minimize your taper, obviously, because taper obviously is going to get you fit for the race and firing for the race, but actually you're stopping training for a week to 10 days. And that's actually, you might be peaking for that race and be maximizing your potential on that race, but actually there'll be subsequent dip in fitness, which you don't want to have in a B race when you will build in for an A race. Secondly, you need to get back into training as quick as possible, obviously. And I think actually probably most people do this too extremely. They do, this was just a B race. I don't need to have 3-4 days off because it was just a B race. And they jump straight back into training. Ironically, that then puts them in a hole that they then end up taking a week off. And they should have just had 3 or 4 days easy after the race. Yeah. You do have to recover. It's still a race, even if it was a B race, you didn't taper for it. You have to recover from that race before you start pushing again. Otherwise, you will find yourself in a hole. And I think that's probably, so less taper, but not actually less recovery afterwards before you get back to training for the A race.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad you're here, Mark.
Yeah, that's good. I'm tired quite a lot there. Yeah.
Okay, Zombie Bike Mark says, #GTN Coach's Corner. I've just started using Training Peaks. Love it. But today I did exactly what was on the plan, and my TSS was much lower than it was anticipated. When I switched from power TSS to heart rate TSS, I was within 10% of the plan. Should I be aiming for zone 2 power or zone 2 heart rate? Because they are not the same for me.
Interesting. I would always personally go for power. It's a lot more, I'd say, accurate. Heart rate, there's a lot that can impact and influence it. Hydration, caffeine, all sorts of things. So I'd always go with power. The other thing also just to highlight, TSS is great. I really like using Training Peaks for this, and you can track your fatigue levels, your form, and all sorts. But it is not gospel. It's not 100% accurate, particularly if you're taking off heart rate. There's so many variables that, as I mentioned, can affect heart rate. And then also say like swimming, like it's so hard to accurately get your TSS from swimming. And again, if you're using heart rate on swimming, there's so much interference with the heart rate straps or optical sensors as you go through the water. So really good as a kind of a ballpark figure to just gauge where you're at, but I wouldn't like 100, go, oh gosh, I was 20 TSS points out from the previous session. It's not quite.
Yeah, take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, TSS, though, is one of those traps where once you start Training Peaks and you start uploading your stuff, and it creates all these pretty graphs that shows how your fitness is growing, and you can see all those red dots for your TSS, and you're like, oh, yeah, those are building up, and that's therefore my fitness is building up and everything. Yeah. But as you say, if it's not accurate... Yeah. And if it's just kind of thumb sucking it based on what you did, or the heart rate you were measuring wasn't accurate because it was wrist based or whatever, it really can be far out from what you're actually experiencing, what your body is actually doing fitness wise. So yeah, I would agree with Mark on that one. Take it with a pinch of salt. Your TSS is very useful if your zones and your recording of those sessions is very, very accurate, but the chances of that actually being the case is pretty low.
I've got to say, if someone is uploading really accurate data to Training Peaks and they are uploading everything, it is amazing. It's such a valuable tool. But if you're only kind of sporadically using and uploading the odd bit, it doesn't really work. It's good. It's a good kind of gauge, but I
think you hit it with the swim TSS because that is generally not recorded. The heart rate's not recorded. It's guesstimating how much stress that's going to create on you based on your critical swim speed and what time you put in for it. You put an hour session in 4Ks, you just kind of, I was in there for an hour and I just ran about 4Ks, and it's just thumb sucked what your TSS on that was.
And if that watch or device doesn't record it as accurately as possible, as you say, you just did a speed session, so actually you had lots of rest periods, that might actually come up with a low TSS, but actually did an incredibly hard swim session. That's a whole third potentially of your overall training volume.
Throws out your whole week.
Take
it with a pinch of salt. Okay, Emmett asks, hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. New to triathlon, I've done one sprint race last year and really enjoyed it. This year I have 2 races, an Olympic distance on the 25th of May and then a sprint on June the 15th. Here's the problem. Between the 2 races, I have my own stag night on June the 6th, so the weekend between both races. What would you recommend for training between the 2 races and with the extra hydration potentially happening between the 2? Thank you so much, Emmett.
So sprint on the first weekend, Olympic on the weekend after.
2 weeks later, he's got Olympic, and the weekend in between, he's got his own stag night.
Whoa. Well, you've got to enjoy your stag.
Absolutely, definitely. Don't throw away your stag for the sake of a triathlon.
He hasn't said how important that second race is.
Oh, I thought you were going to say how important the stag night is. I think hopefully it's going to be his only stag night, so hopefully it's pretty important. He said, how would I get ready for both the races? I mean, I guess a week in between them, you're not actually still going to be hungover. I think dehydration is probably something you want to watch out for, not just in immediately following that, but dehydration can take 72 to 96 hours to recover from bad dehydration. And let's be honest, I know you're drinking a lot on your stag night. You're not going to be well hydrated in the days after that. And that means that's the warning flag, not just for getting rehydrated for the race, but also any training and stuff you do in that period. You're putting yourself at risk by training in that dehydrated state. So be very careful of that. You need to take some proper recovery.
I was going to say, I think probably where you could fall foul is kind of panic training in that second week, going, God, I've just had my stag do, and oh my God, I've done no training over the weekend. And suddenly you start trying to do loads, and as you say, dehydrated, probably not that well fueled, and suddenly you turn up to that second race.
I would also say another major concern, and probably something that you can protect against as best as possible, is illness in that kind of scenario. You're going to smash your body. You're going to be open up to all kinds of illnesses and stuff. So if you can make sure that your
You wear a hazmat suit on your stag do.
yeah, and a mask, wear a face mask for your whole stag do. No, I was going to suggest
Alcohol spray
I was
everywhere.
going to suggest at least immune boosters and stuff in the days before and the days after.
Basically, just go on
eat
and-
as healthy as possible outside of the actual stag do, because let's be honest, you're not going to be very healthy on
You
your
have a
stag
super
do,
fruit
so.
smoothie every morning.
Anyway,
Detox.
enjoy all 3 of those weekends. Hopefully they all go well.
I don't think
Okay.
we're giving you any advice.
No,
other
I'm
than
not sure
just
there's a- I mean,
detox.
yeah.
Anyway.
Final question. Dave Misson asks, I've always been at a loss in drafting races to know how to work as a group. Are there unwritten rules for how long everyone takes a turn? Or do you organize it with who's around you? Or do you just make it up as you go along? My recent experiences are either that I sit at the back getting frustrated by the pace, or I smash myself at the front, letting the frustrations out and burn my matches. Any advice would be great, as I've just qualified for the Wollongong sprint try and need all the help I can get. Mark?
I think this is a really good question, because draft legal racing is becoming more and more popular, or just kind of commonplace in amateur racing. And obviously a lot of people don't have experience in that. And unfortunately, what sort of happens is everyone just finds themselves in these packs. They don't really talk, and they just kind of hope something's going to happen.
It's a hard thing to practice, like in training.
Yeah.
How are you going to get 20 of your mates around to practice that?
And unfortunately, the worst thing you could do is sit on the back and then smash it past and off the front. But I can understand why that happens, and that happens all the time. The main thing is communication in these draft legal races. So it does always take someone or a few people just kind of instigating a bit of kind of group work, because that is, we're so used to work individual in triathlons, but actually you do want to work together with these people as you want to get this through and off.
Which requires chiefs and Indians, doesn't it? Someone needs to be in charge and someone needs to listen.
Yeah.
And if no one is taking charge, you can take charge and just start commanding and saying roll off, and then next roll up, and that kind of thing.
And
or pass on the right, pass on the left, depending on the course.
And what you'll often find is 1 or 2 people kind of understand, they might have done this before, and they'll start, maybe you might do a little flick of the elbow when you want to come off, and all these sort of things, and everyone else will just follow suit. If someone starts surging through and off the front, call them out. You don't need to be aggressive or abusive towards them, but just say, hey, let's work together. You're going too hard when you go through the front.
Less power on the front.
In my experience, if you're polite about it and you try and sort of work with everyone's pretty on board, and they'll quickly see the benefit of working together really well. So,
but you have dropped a few F-bombs at people, haven't you, Mark? It is tempting. Okay, I hope that, guys, has answered your questions, guys. I hope these discussions we've had about the questions have given you some insight into how we answer the questions. If you're enjoying this format, leave a comment down below, because we'll keep it up. And remember, get your questions in hashtag GTN Coaches Corner below this video or any of our videos. And next week we could be answering your question. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.